This exhibit is really about a landscape, and you could call me a landscape photographer because I'm looking at the landscape, but instead of just photographing the landscape, I'm looking almost into the landscape, into the land, into the earth, underneath the soil, into the cells of plants, and thinking about all those tiny molecules, all those tiny atoms that once composed physical bodies of humans, bodies of bombs, bodies of tank, and all those materials decaying and becoming part of the land, and the memories of those materials seeping itself into the land. So I think our relationship to the Vietnam War is also a relationship to nature, is a relationship to the plants. Camouflage uniforms, soldiers wearing these uniforms and becoming part of the landscape. And when we think about the use of like Agent Orange, or herbicides that's used to defoliate the jungle, to clear out the jungle so the enemies couldn't hide, we think back to the plants too. So that's why I think that in this particular body of work, plants kind of play a central role. And it was the only way for me to talk about the landscape is to look at the plants of the landscape. Vietnam is a war to the American imagination. It's not a country. So whenever I tell people I'm from Vietnam, or I was born in Vietnam, I think they think about the war. They don't think about, Vietnam also as a country. So when I was in college, I really thought about that, and I went to Vietnam for the first time and met my grandparents and relatives and started to see Vietnam as a country. But then I started to realize that so much of the war was still part of that landscape. And when I got back to this country, I wanted to work on a body about the Vietnam War. And I wasn't sure where to approach this work. I could have, maybe went to Southeast Asia and make photographs of the landscape. I guess I could maybe do a drawings or make a paintings. And then I had this idea, what about maybe printing on leaves? And it just occurred to me, that when I was a kid, I noticed if you leave anything on the lawn, let's say a water hose or a rake on a really hot summer days, it leaves a silhouette of the object on the lawn. So I took that idea and I started to explore it more. And long behold, I developed this process I call chlorophyll prints. So what I do is I take transparency, which I produce on the computer, and I print this transparency out of the printer. And on this transparency is a negative image, is an image of, a portrait or something. But it's a negative image. And I take a leaf and I place this transparency on top of the leaf, and then place that in a special contact printing frame. It's just a simple sheet of glass on top of the leaf and with a board backing. And then just place that in the sun for a period of 1 to 2 weeks. Now, because the leaf is living, there's clear parts and dark parts of the negative. The clear parts will let the sunlight through, and where it let that sunlight through, that part of the leaf will stay green. The dark part will block the sunlight, so that part of the leaf will loses its chlorophyll pigment, which is the green pigment in the leaf. So that part of the leaf will turn kind of yellow or becomes the highlight of the image. And so after several weeks in the sun, as that process is happening, I stopped it by removing the leaf off the plant and taking the negative off the leaf and drying the leaf really quickly in books, like pressed flowers. So I dried the leaves really quickly to retain the color, because the color, again, is the image. And afterward, I cast the leaf in resin. And a lot of the materials I use, a lot of the leaves are from tropical plants, because I'm talking about the landscape of Southeast Asia, which is, tropical, thick jungle. And I think when we think back to the Vietnam War, we tend to think back about how thick those jungles are. And the reason why I wanted to print it on leaves, especially on grass, of these soldiers, these American soldiers here, is because I was looking at pictures in Life magazine, especially photographs by a photographer like Larry Barrow, where there's one image showing 4 Marines dragging a wounded comrade across a paddy of rice. And one of the issues that Life magazine published was the issue that they call 1 Week's Dead. And in this issue, Life magazine published the portraits of American soldiers who died in the Vietnam War in this 1 week in 1960, I believe 68. And I was looking at these portraits, and the layout was just like a yearbook. It was just like looking through a yearbook of old high school buddies and friends, and was just looking at these portraits, then looking at the name, and then they're all so young, were my age at that time, and looking at the day they die and things like that. So that just has a profound effect on me. And I was thinking of the physical fluid of our bodies. We think about blood, sweat, spit, urine, all those liquid fluid, and how those fluids seeps into the soil, how they become part of the land. There's a piece in the exhibit called Swamp Soldier, and it's a collection of debris of plant materials in the shape of the swamp thing, there's a photograph right next to that piece. And these plant materials are just leaves and dirt, branches, and radiating from this silhouette are portraits from the 1 Week's Dead issues. Well, in a way, I think I'm not really doing anything new. I'm just kind of following the techniques they have in the 60s of the pop art movement. There's really no rules in art making, so one could explore any type of subject matter in their work. And particularly in my work in this time right now, I'm really interested in war because it relates to my history as being a Vietnamese-American coming to this country after the fall of Saigon. So I just was always thinking about how war displaced people. And one way for me to explore those ideas is to make art about it. I work on this stuff for years and years, and it's now I'm able to share it with people. There's no other gift than just to talk to somebody about the work. Yeah. Thank you.